Hello, 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 and welcome to DevHeads, the podcast focused on the ins, outs, and goings on of game development, with host experience ranging from indie, double to AAA. I'm Jay, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host Tina.
Hello, how's it going?
And Mikey.
Hello.
And today we have a very special guest, which we're all very excited for, Mr. Tim Schafer.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, dude. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, I think we'll get the kind of praise out of the way. I think we're all extreme fans of your previous work.
Get that praise out of the way.
Well, one of my favorite games of all time is Brutal Legends, and I'm a huge fan of that game. It was a big marker on because I'm just about to turn 30, so when I was a teenager, it was a big influence on. Yeah,
sorry, you make me feel old.
Sorry to age the room, but it was a big influence on how I, viewed games as a medium and how they could be formed, and the blending of genres and stuff like that. So first of all, thanks for that.
How old were you when you played it?
I can't remember the exact age. When did that come out, Tim?
2009.
Yeah.
October 13th, 2009. Tina and I met at a Brutal Legend press event at the Supper Club. Remember that?
Yep. And then I remember you invited me to the launch party for Brutal Legends.
Wait, not the Comic-Con Guar one? Or the one at Bimbo's in San Francisco.
I went to Guar and I also went to Bimbo's. At Bimbo's, I remember you said no cell phones, and we all had to, but we karaoke'd, and I performed on stage and sang for the first time, which I'm not good at all, but that was amazing.
What was your karaoke song?
I don't even remember. I think,
Thanks, everybody.
I don't remember. Do you have footage of that anywhere?
I don't. I did Living After Midnight, Judas Priest. I do remember that. Because afterwards, my wife said, you sound like Kermit the Frog when you sing. So that's my heavy metal fantasy.
That's me performing at the lunch party. I have a photo right there.
Oh,
and there's you playing Costume Quest when I worked at 1UP. You invited us over. And I think this is, what's that party game on Connect? I forgot. Happy Action Theater. Yeah.
Best game we ever made.
Yeah, no, it was fun. Yes, I wanted to lay the foundation a little bit and let people know how great you are, like truly kind.
Okay, wow, this is great.
Yeah, so
the praise was over, but no, this is great.
When I joined the game industry in 2007, I think I was at Koei for a little bit, and then I joined EGM and 1UP shortly after. But my entire career has been I've always had the precedent of having to prove to people that I played games and that I knew about games and that I really wanted to belong and participate in the creation of games or even discussing them. And when I met you, Tim, you're still to this day one of the only people that never treated me in any weird way and treated me like I was already an equal. And that meant so much to me.
That's awesome. I think I was scared because of how hardcore you were with all your shooter experience. Like, oh God, I don't play shooters.
Yeah, it was really cool. I also have a video of Lily when I did a video with her for IGN. I think we have a clip of it that we want to show.
Yeah, she's 16 now, and she wants to take driver's lessons.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
Look at her. She was 3 years old.
Oh, bless her.
Playing
you're playing
Sesame
together.
Street.
Not a monster.
Yep.
She's a good actor. She's a good actor. I was just watching that too. That's going to make me cry.
Wow, the age of your daughter as well. Like this podcast is just like, let's see how much we can age each other.
I'll win. I'm gonna win the aging contest always.
No,
I guess that is how time works.
Yeah,
that's the trick. That's the biggest trick in the games industry is how to not age too quickly. It can take a lot. It can age you prematurely. The games industry.
I actually kind of to segue off that. I have a question. I was speaking to a friend of mine who works at Riot briefly before this because I put out a tweet saying, you were going to be on and get to chat with you and how excited I was, and we were discussing like time in the industry and how to a lot of people who are or juniors or just like getting into the industry, people who have been in it for 30 plus years, it's kind of intimidating because they have such this depth of experience and have shipped so many games. Like Tina explained, is that something that you you try to be mindful of when you speak to people who are getting into the industry for the first time?
I always feel intimidated in reverse because I'm always, I remember I'm always worried that my head will be stuck in the past, or that when I want to give advice to people just coming out of school, I'm like, I don't know what the world's like for you. Because for me, it was like this. It was like, you could, make your own indie game really easily, or maybe some of these things are still true. In fact, there's more engines and stuff that people can use, so maybe that's more true. But I'm always worried about giving bad advice that was based on like when I got into the industry in like their late 40s, that's a joke, you guys. It wasn't the late 40s. No one laughed at that. They're all like, yeah, from the 40s, right? That's probably when you did it. Yeah. No, but like I do more like worry about being current and being up on things, because there's still part of me is just like, when games imprint on you at a certain age, that kind of certain ages will always be cool to you, and certain games will always be special to you. And I don't want to be just making those games over and over again. But there's part of me, like right over here, I have this collection of like Atari 2600 games, and they still like speak to me in this weird way that if I tried to, they may not to someone younger. So I try to be mindful of that, of like not turning into a dinosaur.
Yeah. My last video that I did was effectively on that. I did an entire thing of how Beyond Good and Evil, I don't know if you've played that game, it changed my life. And how it informed, like, what if we go back, it informed basically where I am today. And it's crazy how like those experiences can imprint. But then if you give them Beyond Good and Evil to someone today, they might not have that same kind of experience, and that's okay. You said something really interesting at the beginning there, which was, back when you started, it was a little bit easier in a way to make indie projects. What was that like back then? Like, how does that differ to like now?
And we're talking the late 80s, early 90s, right?
I mean, I got started in '89, so I got hired at LucasArts right out of college. And I actually, besides the earliest games where like people were making games and shipping them in Ziploc baggies, and that was very indie. But I'm thinking more like the first explosion of like Xbox Live Arcade and stuff. I'm not saying it was easier to make an indie game there, but there were fewer games out, and you could get a lot of attention. And there still are like, big hits like that in the indie world, but it seems like one of the reasons we started Day of the Devs was just because it seems like it's so hard for games to like stand up and be noticed in the huge crowd of games that are released all the time. So there are a lot of games that
saturated.
What's that? Yeah. Well, and it's great that there's so many games to play, and everybody can find their own unique games. There's so many subgenres and specialties, but it is, it's maybe harder to just get automatically noticed. You just have to work harder at it, for sure.
Well, it's about who you know too, right? And like the marketing behind you. It's almost not fair to a lot of the AAA studios have like $200 million budgets to say, "Hey, look at us and look at our game." Pretty wild. I wanted to say that when I want to go back to when I met you, I was at a crossroads in my life. I remember interviewing with you. I don't know if you remember.
Community manager.
Yes, and I was so silly because you were like, "Here, who's this?" And you held up a figure of Manny. And I was like, I don't know.
What are you talking about?
Who Manny is. But
you know the test. Who do you think this is?
Yeah, that's Manny. I got his name wrong. But no, you're very kind. But it was like work with you or work with Infinity Ward at the time. And it was a really, really, really hard choice. And I can say that I'm glad that I did Infinity Ward only for the fact that I met my husband and I have my kids now. But in terms of like creative happiness, I think Gravity, I think Double Fine is like a really cool place. Working on a franchise where there's already set expectations and sort of like a religious, culture around what they want out of it. You don't have the flexibility to be as creative, whereas at your studio, you don't always necessarily stick to an artistic theme. You encourage your team to participate in the Fortnite Amnesia stuff, where you guys have 2 weeks to
Arcade Jam.
Yeah, I watched that video. It was really wild. It's cool to see. You let your fans into the game development space in a unique way where other studios really haven't yet. Has there been any sort of I guess, any changes to your culture because of that, or any
Yeah, I mean,
between the devs?
yeah, I mean, I think a part of that was just wanting to pull back the curtain and expose game development to because it was always very mysterious to me when I was young. There's no idea. They never, old Atari games never put the designer's name on the box. Like everything was always hidden. It was like they're made by these factories, mysterious, Willy Wonka factories, and so just showing how. And that's why it took me so long to start a company in a way. A lot of people were saying you should start a company, but I was like, oh, I don't even know the first thing about that. And just showing that it's like regular people do. It is hard, but regular people, people that are not smarter than you, people who might be dumber than you, are doing it all the time. So we just wanted to show that. It's I don't know if it's changed our culture. I mean, some people get more camera aware, because we have the documentary crew going. Some people ignore the cameras. Some people can't ignore them and play to them. But I think there's been effects like we were doing the first documentary is right during Gamergate, and we got a lot of just like hot fire hose of just the internet blowing in our face every day. I think burned some people out. They're like, I can't face the raw internet anymore. I need to be protected from this, and so that definitely had an effect on us. But in general, I think we've been doing it so long that's attracted people to the studio who saw one of those documentaries and you just wanted to be part of that. Their ideas might be able to bubble up to the top.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What does playing to the camera look like?
Well, some people in the office always turn towards the camera like they're on The Office.
Do a Jim Halpert face.
Yeah,
I'm one of those people that can't help it.
Yeah.
When we were doing
can't
coverage
do it
at
3 times
GDC.
in one meeting. Come on, you can't do that. Because they're very quiet and they're very unobtrusive, but they're always there in meetings, and so you can kind of ignore them. But certain things make you aware. Like when you say something that's really inappropriate or something that might get you sued, you're like, they won't use that.
I don't know many teams that did it. I remember watching the PlanetSide 2 dev streams. They actually streamed like a meeting. And then I think they stopped because it was probably too difficult for them, made them uncomfortable or something. It feels like it would be such a presence in the room.
Yeah, well, it was harder on Broken Age because we released that as the game was being developed. So we released they made the documentary as we went. And so in some ways it kind of committed them to certain storylines in the doc, but also committed us to certain decisions. Like it was harder to show as we were going. Like people were always touchy about showing things like cutting stuff. Like we cut a whole level, or something like that. The fans would be like, "Oh, I want to play that level." So it's really hard. And usually, when you release the game, no one knows what you cut for good reasons. And then no one misses what they don't see most of the time. But in that doc, the people saw everything, and so we were like, "Oh, this game's too big. We should cut some stuff." Oh, but we already showed them everything, and so it was that was a little weird. And so on the second one for Psychodyssey, they shot the whole thing and didn't release it till it was over, and then they dropped it all at once, so that they could know what the story was when they're editing. They could tell the story from beginning to end in a more cohesive way too.
It must have been a sort of relief of pressure in the studio, right? Knowing that whatever was going to be seen was going to be after the fact rather than during the process. Yeah.
Expectation, right? That's such a dangerous thing to meddle with. I always think back to weirdly The Hobbit, the Hobbit trilogy by Peter Jackson, and how, because we were now in the age of videos and stuff like that when they were making The Hobbit, they did those mini series of the development of The Hobbit and they dropped them before the movies were out. And in a way, I think that's quite dangerous because people who are hyper obsessed, like our biggest fans, will create what they think the game or the movie or the piece of media will be from that information. And sometimes it can be more outlandish and better than what we're actually going to develop, right? Because it's their ideal thing in their head, and it can lead to a lot of like weird resentment. So releasing it after a fact, it becomes, this is just documentation on what we did to get where we are, rather than here's what you could expect, right?
And if you watch the Psychodyssey, it's quite a roller coaster because some really bad things happen in the middle of development. And for a long time, it didn't look like the game was going to be good. And so if we had released that before the game came out, I think people would be like, oh, geez. And we never would have gotten signed. Like with the point where our publisher disappeared and we had to get re-signed. But if that doc was out and the game looked like we were releasing episodes where it was in its terrible state. it probably would have ended the game and never would have gotten re-signed. So it's weird to watch the documentary now because it seems that the game is so troubled in such, and I feel like the game came out really well and we're all really happy with it and got nominated for things. And so it's weird to know that when you're watching the doc going like, how did they pull out of this? Sometimes I'm watching it and we're like, wait, how did we pull out of that? Because that looks like it's crashing and burning. But all of us who have made games know games are often not very fun until they are.
It's a very vulnerable experience, and I think people are starting to understand that now. Because when you're sharing your personal opinion or thought about what could make something fun, which is very hard to nail down. There's no easy way to answer. What fun is. Emotions fly, and I guess being in production for as long as I have, trying to get the best out of people and help them navigate their emotion is something that I like to do. In addition to watching the game thrive from beginning to end. Yeah.
And it's all about like empathy, whether it's within the team or with players, because even on the team, when I was reviewing like the early levels on Brutal Legend, I was like, this level is not fun. And there's some really obvious things broken. I don't understand what these designers were thinking. And then I would meet with the designers and they're like, we're waiting for this tech on this. And this thing is waiting for this. And we can't do this until that. And I totally understood why the level was in that state. And I was like, I'm so glad I didn't go off on some critique of this level without, now I have this information. I realize what they're going through. And they have the same, they do know how to make games and they have the same sensibilities I do, but they just are stuck on certain ththings. And it's in some ways the documentary is like, can we get players to have the same empathy to be like, because a lot of times when you're reviewing any sort of work, you're like, you think everything was a choice. Like, they chose to do this. They chose to do this. And it's like, no, they chose to fix like 98% of the stuff. And you're just saying, why did they choose not to fix this other 3%? It's like, you're lucky that they had time to fix 97% of the game. Yeah. It's like a miracle that any game gets done. So not everything was a choice. A lot of it was just like how they dealt with the diversity.
Yeah.
I think the good news is it's the best it's ever been, and it's probably only going to get better. The empathy, the transparency. We can all remember when they were writing in published magazines like the people who made this game should be shot and like crazy shit like that.
Damn, what?
That stuff happened. Oh yeah. I won't say the person or the game, but it was a movie tie-in game. Somebody that I worked with, and they had to crunch, and it was insane. Like it was terrible because Tim can speak more to it, but like that seemed to be fairly common back then. This was like late 90s, early 2000s. And yeah, one of the reviewers wrote something like that. Like these people should be shot. These people should have not death threat stuff that was earnest, but just really disrespectful stuff. And that happened. People wrote that stuff about developers who were just trying to ship the damn thing.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that you all think it's getting better.
100%. I've dedicated like my career to educating as many people as I can on that kind of philosophy and understanding that games, in the nicest way, every game project you have ever seen is barely being held together with string and, in the best kind of ways. And like, it's very difficult to make games. It's extremely difficult. And so many creative minds are working together to make this thing work. And like you said, all games are a miracle. So it's just about, like you guys did wonderfully with your little documentaries. It's just educating players on the craft of this art form, right?
And humanity, just Yeah,
we're people.
I like that.
Which is kind of what this podcast is about: getting people on just to talk about their experiences making games and stuff like that. And what's interesting with you, Tim, is because you've been in the industry for so long, you've seen the industry change over the time that you've been in it. How do you think it's changed since when you began to where you are now? What are some of the most drastic changes you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I've only had 2 jobs really, so I Double Fine and LucasArts. So for me, the thing I feel the most like every day is just a relationship to the audience. The relationship to fans is just so much more high bandwidth now, and just so they're involved. They know about the transparency, like we talked about, but also you get their reaction watching streamers, and everything is so different than when it very first started. It was like video games were just thrown over this wall, and you get them and you'd be like, Super Mario Brothers, how did some magician make this thing? Like, how did this, like, I don't know, this is amazing. And so and then making games, we would do a game like Data Tentacle and then like wait for 3 months for like a Computer Gaming World to write a review of it. And as like knowing whether you've done a good job or not was mostly like the people in the office. What did they say? Oh, they liked it. The sales, or and now it's like before a game comes out, like the moment we ship a game, we can instantly watch someone live streaming and talking about it, and that just feels so. Anyway, so that's one of the biggest things. There's also so much depth in subgenres now and established genres that it's like instead of just like what could this game be like, like the difference between like Asteroids and Missile Command, if you think about the early days, like was so like we were just trying something new, a whole new control scheme, whatever. And now it's like, oh, you're doing a MOBA, they're like this, they have to have this set of features and people expect this. So it's like, okay, I'm not stepping in that at all. Like there are all these really deep genres like shooters and stuff where there's so many years of experience, both in dev and players, that it's like a little intimidating to try and make something that a lot of people, have done before. Those are two examples. And I feel like we're talking about crunch mode. There's a lot more feelings about the quality of life of people in game development. Like it used to be pretty, game developers are treated as like pretty expendable resources. And I feel like game developers are kind of like, well, how can we make this more sustainable so we don't burn out and leave the industry and all that? So that's one of the more positive changes.
What's the longest you've had a crunch on a game?
Well, I think the last worst one was Psychonauts 1. It was 2005, and we were just like, oh, we lost our publisher, and we're gonna die. We got to make a demo for E3, and then we got to get it re-signed, and now we got to ship it. So everything felt like this like existential thing. And I think crunch mode, a lot of times people only think it's something that a company does like for business reasons or something, but a lot of times it's like a stress. It's a way of dealing with stress when you just don't know if your game's going to be good. The ship date's coming. You're like, everything goes into it just because that's the only way you feel. You can't go home and relax because you're like, I should be working the game right now. There's this, there's that kind of, all these different reasons why crunch happens.
A place of passion sometimes, right? Like it's not wholly a business thing. It can just be like you're so passionate about the project you're working on, you want it to be as good as possible. So a lot of devs, unfortunately, naturally fall into crunch as a result of their passion and wanting it to be the best it can be.
Well, they come together. It's like, even an indie dev working all by themselves will crunch themselves with no manager or business person type. And then you have business people who do say like, okay, we got to ship on this thing because we have a marketing commitment. We've already paid for advertising. You can't change the date. You can't lower the quality of it. You can't get any more money from us. So you can just turn down the quality of life of all your staff. That's the only knob that still moves. And so that does come from on high, and then from individuals, it's like, I love this game so much, I want it to be the best, or maybe just career-wise, like, this is my shot. I'm gonna make this. This is my one chance to have a game out there, and I got to make it good. And then you have a few other forces that just different people who in some ways, there's a lot of things that lead towards crunch happening. It doesn't come from one direction; it comes from like multiple directions, and that's why it's so hard to fight. And that's why we fight it to this day. Like we still have people, Psychonauts 2 worked too hard, but I think the idea of crunch mode seems so something you would never tolerate. I mean, like, because crunch mode, those of us who have really been in the industry for a long time, is like people worked at, LucasArts and Telltale and all these companies would be like, someone would come to the office and be like, well, we're working nights and weekends for the next 6 months, or a year or something, like 7 days a week. We'll do your laundry for you, or something like would be, some things like
how
that.
generous.
There'd be these things where you're just like, it was like a lock-in, like you're locked in the office. And I don't know if that's still happening in studios. Like we wouldn't do that, but there's still this sense, there's still like it creeps up on you. Like it still is this knob that you have to guard because it's so tempting. It's like, oh, there is that knob that we could turn to make the game a little better, So, yeah.
It's an interesting point you make about the indulging your human anxiety portion, where it's just like, well, I'm going to keep crunching because I don't want to deal with the stress and the anxiety of not working on the game and wondering if that, because I didn't put in that extra time, that's why the game's going to fail and my career is going to go to shit, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of crunch is, just indulging your anxiety about the success of yourself in the project. And
theoretically, like if like maybe a producer or the person running the project can be like, look, really figure out how much work there is to do and how much time you have left. And if they can prove it to you that like it's doable in that time, which it usually is not, but like, look, we only have to do this much work this week, and then we're on track to shipping. Then you can maybe go home and be like, it's okay. It's okay. The game's going to be,
Yeah.
So that's ideally how it works. That's, but because otherwise you're just like, I don't know a lot of us just don't know if our games are going to be good because they're not good right now. You're playing them. You're like, this isn't fun. And we're shipping on what date? Oh my God, I better be at the office. Like that's a hard mindset to get out of.
like finishing your homework assignment for college to graduate. You're like, I gotta get it done. On let's see, on Apex Legends, I was one of 3 producers, and I produced like 75 devs. And they didn't want to work in a way where they scheduled out a lot of their features on the design side, right? They're like, we're free flowing. So I always had to work backwards, right? When they said, here's what we want, and they pitched it, I needed to figure out from beginning to end how long it would take, including, localization, getting VO hired, doing the marketing, and yeah, all of that. And I would give them a date to designers, like saying, this is where you need to hand off to everyone else. And that's how we operated for Apex to get our dates hit, which was really chaotic and fun. But yeah.
How'd that go? Did that work out?
I don't know. Did it? I don't know.
Well, I mean, just in terms of schedule. Just in terms of schedule.
Yeah. But what was crazy is, for Crunch, what I think some of the designers I closely worked with realized is if they crunch, everyone else crunches. It's not just like, I'm going to stay tonight and work an extra 10, or 8 hours. Like, you're impacting everyone else down the chain, and they need to be on board with it too. And those were discussions that we needed to have. And I think they're absolutely necessary.
Is that because of like a social element or because of a technical element, or is it both?
Both.
If so one group is crunching and creating a bunch of content that needs to be polished or finished by other people, that's one way that crunch can get passed down. And the other one is that social pressure of like, it used to be like, that was this notion of like employment in general, is that your boss's car is like the first in the parking lot and the last to leave. Like, if they're still there, I better be there, So we were, first trying, like, how are we going to get rid of crunch? Like, it's like one of them was, especially after a lot of us had kids. I think that is this thing that, like, crunch mode is so much easier when you're 20 years old, and there's,
Single,
there's not really a lot at your house to go home to anyway. Like, well, I could go home and eat Chinese food and watch TV by myself, or I could be at this company with all these fun people and work late into the night. Like, it's a lot easier when you're that. But then when you're like have a family and stuff, it's like you feel terrible, or even just in a relationship, like any sort of. So as soon as I started, I'm leaving at 5. Like, it's just the kid makes it really clear. Like, you have to go home. So it's like, I'm leaving at 5, and I'm going to walk down the hallway and let everyone see that I'm leaving. Like, just because I'm running the studio, and if I'm like showing everybody that I'm leaving, and I feel like it's really cool to stay late, then that's something you can do to help. Just kind of model that behavior. Like, I'm leaving. I have a life.
This is one of the things that in the work that I do now, I'll tell leaders, I'll talk to leaders, because I think they have an unrealistic expectation where they say, no, we'll just tell people not to crunch and we'll work really late. For them, it'll be fine. Mm-hmm. And I have to explain, no, it won't work like that. They will be afraid, especially if you have a lot of indie developers who want to do, they don't know what the expectations are. They don't know the standards, because they won't take your word for it. When you say the standard is, we're going to work late, you're okay, we're the leads, don't do it. They'll do it anyway. So you have to leave. Like, you have to set limits, and you have to be the example.
It's a test, or that's the way to become a lead, is to be willing to work late, and it's bad for the leads. Like, that's the hardest thing on Tsarouhas too, is the leads, because they would pick up any work that someone else dropped. Like someone on their team dropped, but they're still responsible for that section of the game. So like, I'll just do it. I'll do it at night, because they're often really experienced. They can do stuff fast. You have the sense that you can do an infinite amount of work in an hour. So like, I'll take care of it. And that's hard, because you realize you are sending a message to every time you say like, I'll finish that tonight. Like, you're sending this message, to the rest of the team.
Lead by example. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a subtext to all of it, and sometimes it's bad subtext that you didn't want, but it's there.
Yeah, and that extra work that you crunch to get done is going to impact all the other teams in some way. I like to ask the audio teams if they're happy or if they need help, because if they're not happy, then nobody's happy. Because
that's very. I bet they love that you do that, because audio to me is like they're kind.
Yeah, they're like last. Yeah,
as a sound designer,
yeah.
As a sound designer, I'm very appreciative of that. It is often commonly forgotten. I'm sure not by you guys, but I remember doing some commission work for a small indie project years ago, and they hired me on to do it. And I went in with my usual questions of, hey, so what kind of do you want from the music? Because I was doing their sound effects and their music. It's like, what do you want? What kind of feeling do you want? Can I see some concept art? Can I do this? And they were like, their legit response was, oh, it doesn't matter. It's sound. No one's going to care.
Oh, Jay.
And that was their like initial response to me saying, let me help you.
Yeah, let me care.
Like,
I already
create the
care.
thing for you, and
I
like
would
I
like
want
to
to see what
continue
your
caring,
vision is.
please.
It's like, let's do it. And they were like, it doesn't matter, sound doesn't matter. And I obviously quit that project extremely
That sounds like a
fast.
cartoon of a bad place.
Yeah, yeah. And lo and behold, that game didn't end up getting released. Who'd have thought? But it is strange that they do get left at the wayside. But like speaking to like indie, which is kind of where I am currently, it's interesting because you're saying that crunch kind of trickles down. Well, with indie, we're kind of in a weird space where on the main project I'm working on right now, I am the level designer, sound designer, composer. I'm a 3D artist. I do texturing. So if I get really passionate and make too much of one thing, I'm creating more work for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just this endless loop of just like, you have to be like so. I'd be interested to hear from your guys' perspective how difficult it is to manage feature creep in that kind of space. Because as an indie, you really have to manage it because you are just compounding everything onto yourself. If you add a new feature, it's just like you have to do everything. Is that the same for your spaces?
I like to say, and this is just my experience, you kind of got to be Batman about it. Batman, at least by some interpretation. Yeah. Well, he can't kill people because he doesn't want to go down that path, as he tells the Red Hood or whenever it is. It's a slippery slope. So you have to set like a hard limit and trust your producers and trust production and trust your leaders.
And
when you say,
okay,
what's that?
Kill people. You can't
kill people. That's another.
Yeah, you can punch them. You can punch them hard and knock them out.
You can punch them real hard to the point
they have an
where
exclamation point over their head. You gotta
give them brain damage. But
let's be real. A lot of those people are dead. A lot of those guys go back to jail.
Most of them, yeah.
Fucking laid out by Batman and killed for sure. That game's huge, right? But no, like basically you set a limit and you say, no, look, like listen, this is what the game is going to ship, and we got to ship it in 6 months. Now, obviously, like we can delay it, we could push it, but once you set that limit of these are the features, you stick to it, and you just have to be it. You have to be like Batman. That's, I think, one of the effective ways, at least, because once you set those rules, then now people can focus. It's so easy in the AA space, and for modders and indie people, I think too, especially modders, they get distracted by the new fun thing. So you just have to set a hard limit.
Oh man, when you say 6 months left, my like heart races because that's way too late.
Just the phrase 6 months.
You're boned.
Maybe that's a AA thing. I don't know. I remember conversations like, the 6 months.
I think it depends on the amount of content we're talking about here. So like if on Apex, if someone had a new idea or wanted to do a feature, I made sure to grab one person from every department involved in the room. So we all were signed up and aware of what was happening. So I let them decide. I mean, I didn't have, I didn't mean it like that. They all decided based on what we all knew, right? The shared context, if they wanted to crunch or not. In some cases, they said yes because it made the game better. And it made crunch less chaotic and painful. Like I think with crunch, I experienced it at the beginning of my dev career. The team is so big, like over 400 or 500 people working on one game. You don't know when that crunch is going to end, and that just makes it so nerve-wracking. You're like, I'm doing 7 days a week for months on end. When is it going to stop? Is it helping anything? And I think the morale is like a big thing to help manage. So I mean, like I see devs, that are up for like, working a little bit longer if it makes a better product, but give them the power to decide that.
Yeah, I mean, I think autonomy is a bit one of the things. Not the crunch. When you're just evaluating how crunch feels, it feels a lot different if you have autonomy in it, and it feels different if you love the project. But it feels different if you're participating in the success of the project. Like, are you getting a bonus? Like, I don't know. Like, a lot of things. None of them make them like okay, but they definitely affect how you feel about it a little bit. But what you're talking about is really hard because my team would be like, don't talk to this guy about it. He doesn't know that he's, I'm always a problem because I'm always like, what this game needs, like the day before we ship. But that's also because like my two places where I'm most active, I feel like are like at the beginning when the project with the blank page, like coming up with new stuff is like where I'm really excited and happy and like making up stuff. And then it's really hard to see the project in the middle sometimes because it's like, it's not fun and you have a plan and you kind of think it's going to work and you just have a lot of work to do. But then, in the last third of it or the last quarter of it is when I start to see the most of like, okay, I see the game now, and I see the difference between the great game and the game that it is right now. Like, it's really clear to me now what needs to get done, and that's right when people are shutting down and getting into ship mode, and I'm like, okay, but I see now what this needs, so it's really, those are really tough conversations, and it's really just because, our team fights for, everyone kind of represents their point of view, and you have like a certain number of coins you can spend in that area, like, okay, I got to figure out which one of these things I actually care the most about and which ones I can let slide. And some of these it's about context switching as a creative person, because you have different modes for creativity. You have like the blue sky mode, and you have this more artistic mode where you're getting into skills, and you have this more judgy mode, and then you have this the mode where you fight for things, and being able to switch out of that kind of like, if you're just alone in the flow, if you're doing a painting, assuming you could paint, I can't paint, like you're painting, I think you're just like, you're not really counting every brush stroke. You're just kind of like, what does this painting need? And if someone was talking to you, be like, hey, wrap up, you'd be like, get out of my face, I'm busy. But if you could just step back and like be like, oh, we don't, we haven't paid the rent, we need to get out of this office. Like, if you can like step out of that mode and see what sometimes what your producer is mentioning to you, you're like, oh, like, then you can say, oh, I don't really need to that. There's enough paint. Like,
Yeah.
But it is like a mental state that you need to be able to switch between to understand how to reprioritize for different modes of development.
How big is Double Fine right now? How many?
We're about 70.
70.
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself double A?
I know we've always been in that very, like, there are always articles like this space, because there used to be a ton of studios in the early 2000s that were like, not huge and not tiny, but we acted like an indie studio, but we were like 60 people when we made Brutal Legend, and Brutal Legend was like the most AAA kind of thing. We had the biggest team, we had a big budget, we had like 107 licensed pieces of music, we had, Jack Black in it and everything like that. So, we tried to, then when we started making smaller games, still have them, look like the AAA games that were, we had the fidelity. We tried to have the fidelity of like like that. But they I see, I'm one of those people who gets a game that has like a season pass and all these huge, like, it's like a lifestyle. And I'm like, I really just like to play something that has like a, I don't know. I don't need the games to be that big, for example, I guess,
Yeah.
So.
So you did mention doing indie, AA, AAA. Is there a space that you've preferred to work in?
Well, we did try, like, we were just trying everything, and we were doing mobile games for a while. We had really tiny mobile games, really big games, and I like making a game like Psychonauts 2 was like a great way to tell a story of a certain size, to have a certain impact and get a certain amount of attention. That has a lot of advantages. And doing some of our smaller games like Stacking, or Costume Quest, if you look at those games, they get to like try things that are, maybe more experimental, or maybe that's the size that idea wants to be, and so there's really, I think it's more about the size of the game that's right for the idea, because I think not every idea, lasts for 40 hours. Oh, there's stacking happening right there. People screaming out stacking dolls.
I have one of those
Eric
somewhere.
is on point. Props to Eric for always putting up these videos. Thank you, Eric.
He's not just rolling B-roll. He's a highlighter.
Eric's a wizard.
Active B-roll.
He's the Wizard of Oz behind all of our faces. We're the curtain that's going to get peeled back. Saying.
Oh,
go
ahead.
Carry on, Tina.
Oh, I was going to say, here's a way the industry's changed since you've joined. Your title when you first joined was...
Did you guys see?
No,
I saw a brief... Oh my god.
That surprised me. Tim is now, for people who can't see it, he's the Cookie Monster.
Filter? Am I?
You have a filter on.
Yeah, you're the Cookie Monster.
Wow, I didn't do that. I'm being spoofed.
Your title was Scumlet, which is really weird. That sounds so degrading.
Yeah, that's how they introduce you to LucasArts. Hey, Scumlets.
Oh my god!
Wow.
I started as a Scumlet. That's what I tell. No, that was our language that we wrote Monkey Island and stuff, and it was Scum. And they were like, well, the project leaders are kind of like these movie directors, and then they'll hire all these little assistants to like wire up the scenes and stuff like that. And they'll be Scumlets. But we make sure they're spelled Scum, Lete, like a droplet, not like
So
Scumlets,
it's French,
TTE,
so it's
not like
fancy.
Rockets or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, we loved it. I mean, it was like we were like, yeah, we're the Scumlets. So
Was
It
that on
like
your
a
resume?
grading term.
no, it was assistant designer / programmer.
I had that experience today. So at Second Wind, because we own the company, my job title is design miner because my show's design delve and it's got a mining aesthetic. It's a whole thing. So my job title is design miner, and I'm filling out my immigration forms to move over to America. And they were like, "What is your job title for this job?" And I'm like,
No, you lied. Man. You lie.
design miner. And I'm like, do I have to put a paragraph explaining this, or are they going to call me up and say, what is
That's
this?
when
Hey,
you
like-
put the most acceptable thing for customs to
Executive.
Yeah, design
Executive.
director. Yeah.
The only person who can do this, and that's why I'm in the country. Just fit that into the title.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll see how all that goes. But
There's an era where
I found
everyone's
it,
everyone's business card had like monkey or ninja after whatever the title was. They're just like
awesome. I'm
everyone got
all
to pick
about
their
that
own
life.
title.
I
You
love
still
it.
have-
So
Do you still
Go
have
ahead.
your business cards?
In a drawer somewhere. I'm always like, people hand me a business card. Oh, what am I doing with this piece of paper? What am I can throw this away in my hotel room later?
take a picture and then respectfully accept it, and then later throw it out. Yeah.
Oh.
How have you seen the publishing space change? Because I know you've quite famously had issues with publishers in the past. Like, how has that kind of whole system changed while you've been in the industry?
Well, from what I hear, like we used to always be chasing these publishing contracts, and it seemed to be harder and harder to get. Like the deals were very onerous. We signed Psychonauts. It was like publishers would take your IP, they would not pay you any of the royalties until they'd paid themselves back like 3 or 4 times what they'd invested, and we were like, okay, that's all the deals you could get. And then one of the reasons we started making smaller games, because we always held on to our IP for Psychonauts and Brutal Legend, and it didn't seem possible anymore. It seemed like none of the deals were like letting you keep your IP. So we had smaller games. If you ask for less money, you can get a better deal. Obviously, I mean, as far as keeping your rights. But sometimes when I'm giving advice to young indies now, I'll be like, now you get that contract, make sure that they do this and this and this. And then people are like, that happened to you? That doesn't happen anymore. Like a lot of the deals they talk about, like they're like, I think it was It Takes Two or something. Anyway, there's some deals where I couldn't believe the deal they got. So I don't know if deals were getting better, or if they stayed better, or that was just a phase. But it seems like publishing deals got more favorable. What do you all think? You've been out in it more recently than I have.
Yeah.
I don't know what they were like before, to be honest, because I wasn't part of the publishing side before.
Do they still take your IP?
Not necessarily, but in the contract that I've experienced recently, they wanted the rights to potentially buy the IP before anybody else.
Right.
And then there was one publisher that said, "We'll fund you, but we have the right to fire anyone on your team."
So everybody. I've never seen that one. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
There's also like when the money gets paid. Like that was always a big deal. Like, because some deals you get first money. You get like as soon as money comes in, you get like 20% of that, and until it gets paid back, and then it switches to like 80% or something. And so I don't know what the current indie contracts are like.
I think it got
recently had. Oh, carry on.
I was just gonna say, I think it got better because indie development became all the more feasible, right? There's good tool sets, there's good engines, and so publishers had to say, okay, well, people can actually make games without us, so our deals need to get better. That's my theory, at least.
I also think public perception and like the day and age we're in the internet is a huge factor. We recently had Tim Bender, the who runs Hooded Horse, is a publishing house that does more RTS style games. And what he was saying is that they're not just going for profit; they're trying to create a space for specific genres, because there are so many different publishers out there trying to aim at specific audiences. If they kind of fuck over horrifically a dev team, which is the people that the fans care about, that could potentially be a huge media storm, and could mean they're not going to get deals with any other teams and stuff like that. So I think it's in the publishers, it's to their benefit to make good deals for the devs, so then they can work harmoniously rather than like against each other. And I think we're moving towards that. It's not seen everywhere, but I think we're starting to see some of it.
Indie devs are more talking to each other and sharing their stories more too, to like be like, you can't actually give us this horrible deal because we'll talk about it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, especially in the age of social media, right? If a publisher acts in a way that's unfavorable, the gamers will not tolerate it.
But I'm sure there's still bad eggs out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. But
100%.
knowing that unless it's a massive AAA massive publisher, if you get one bad like press run of people just saying they did this terrible thing, it could destroy your public perception and just destroy you. It's rare, but it happens, you know.
So hold on to your IP, everybody, and get first money.
Yes.
What's interesting is, sorry, Tina, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What's interesting is like with all the layoffs and stuff that are happening now, and just the way the industry is changing. Whether the speculation is, it's just a cycle, or it might be fundamentally changing. All the stuff that we're talking about could change very easily, and that's what's always been interesting about working in game deving just for the past 10 plus years is just how it shifts every single year.
Yeah.
You have the unique and rare experience in our industry of working, leading a company like yours, but also pitching games internally and to publishers. Do you have a preference? Do you prefer pitching an idea to your coworkers? I assume yes, but when you pitch to publishers, what's the biggest difference?
I mean, in any audience, there's always this question of trust. Like hopefully, pitching to people within the company, there's some trust that they know you and they know what you can do, and they'll be like, well, he'll figure this part out. And publishers, if there's more separation and someone doesn't know you that well, or there's just the biggest problem with pitching often is just you know your game so well, you don't know how to explain it to somebody else, and you talk for a while and they're like, what is the game? What? They just really on a basic level don't understand what your game is. And so remembering to start from zero and explain, and mostly just with all pitches, it's just about letting your enthusiasm show. Just like, why are you excited about making this game? Because sometimes I have this like nervous way of talking where when I'm getting nervous in a pitch, I'll just lock down to the facts and my mouth will get tighter. And sometimes people are like, are you excited about this game? Because I don't sound excited about it because I'm so nervous. But just, there's a reason you came up with this game idea. And so like just letting that show while you're talking about it, whether you're talking internally or externally is the same. But I don't like pitching. I mean, never like being on the road pitching to publishers was always just the hard part of it when you're an indie studio is that your whole studio is on the line usually, unless you have a big bank account with a lot of savings from some hit game that you made. You're there, you're aware when your bank runs out and you're like, okay, we got to get this signed by September and it's July. And you're like, we've been through 5 pitches, we got 3 more tomorrow. Like that kind of weighing on gives you this manic, like, did you like it? What did you think of that pitch? Oh my God, we'll do. And they're like, yeah, we like it, but we think the main character should be a chicken. You're like, you got it, chicken. That's great. Being in that mindset is not very fun.
Has that ever impacted like how and what you pitch? Like, have you ever had a game that to you personally and to your team, you feel that is super interesting, is going to touch on new things that you as a team haven't done before, but publishers aren't going to bite? So, like, you have to do something else. Has that ever happened? Have you ever taken something?
Usually
that
we don't. Not in advance. Like, we don't say, "I know what they'll like, and I'm going to add this to this game." It's often like there are these trends of what different publishers are going through, and they just have this manifest. Like, every game has to be multiplayer, or every game has to have a co-op, or every game has to be a live service. And you're pitching to them, and they're like, "That's great. Now, can we make that a live service?" And you're just kind of like, try to sound open to it. Like, okay, it's a single player narrative game that's we could add some skins to the a lot of it is just trying to say that what you're pitching is what they want, because a lot no matter who you're talking to, they have a plan. They've already got their plan for like the year. They see the holes in their launch window. They're like, oh, we need something to come out in this quarter on this year. And you're like, yeah, we could hit that. It's that kind of stuff of just kind of like having to like trying to nudge maybe a little bit one direction over to fit that thing that they're looking for. And eventually you find that publisher who does want what you're pitching, but you can't really like change you. I first pitched, I was pitching Brutal Legend. People were like, oh, this is so great. This is really creative. could it be country western music? Like I seriously got like, does it have to be heavy metal? And it wasn't so much specifically country, but like, couldn't it just be like all music, like pop music? You have a rap faction, and like, I'm like, oh, this is the worst. This is the worst nightmare. And like,
Oh my
Dude,
God.
that is mental. That is
That's
absolutely
awesome.
mental.
All music. So every genre has a faction.
yeah, every genre has a faction and stuff. See, he likes it. He's like, oh yeah, I see.
Yeah, he's sold.
There's
Hey,
a
you
little,
should go
I had
into
a little
publishing,
glimmer.
Mikey.
I had a little glimmer. No, well, just think about like,
You could make that game, but
Yeah, you could
that
make
game. But then you'd have like Taylor Swift faction fighting the.
I'm not sure the
faction.
opposite of it.
Swifties
It
must
might
Yeah,
be
the
feel
Kanye
weird.
West. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
Kanye
So
West faction.
I
Sounds
didn't
expensive.
know if I was gonna have the chance to raise this, but it's a question that I've had since I was a kid. On Brutal Legends, which
He's-
is one of my
You know,
favorite
do
games.
you see how he got that in there?
Yeah, I
did. Okay, keep going.
As a
It's
kid.
the question is, what was the decision behind the RTS mode, and like adding that like second element of the game? Like, because I'm really interested in like how that came about, because I think a lot of other studios would have just stuck to one kind of gameplay thread, but you branched out into a whole load of different ones. Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, I mean that's what's interesting is how you describe that and marketing and expectations, like we talked about it, because that wasn't added on. That was the core of the game. But the core idea, like the earliest idea, was playing the very first Warcraft. You know, me playing RTS or playing Herzog Zwei on the Sega Genesis, which was like a console RTS. And I was like, oh, RTS is really interesting. I love having those little minions that I can send off on thing, make them do my bidding over here and over on the map and spread out around the map. And I really like that. And then I had this idea for just a story about a roadie who goes back in time and can fix everything and be like Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. And then they went together to do this game. Like, oh my God, I can have all my hot rods and dragsters and like cool heavy metal stuff in an RTS. I can make this RTS. So we started making this RTS. It was started as a multiplayer game. For the first year, it had no dialogue, had no anything. It was just actions and squad controls and RTS stuff. And then the original publisher was like, it's gonna take a while to learn how to do this. You need to really like a single player campaign to like tutorialize all these elements. And so we
No big
started
deal.
adding that.
Just a single player campaign.
So we added a single player campaign, and then we're like, we should, who's this character? Like we've been basing on kind of like Danzig and Jack Black a little bit. Like maybe we should just try, and then like, why don't you get Jack Black? And like it started to grow, and the single player campaign grew and grew and grew to the point where like, oh no, people are like, that's the game. And this thing that we had, the core and the inspiration and everything that started for us, was like, wow, people don't even, and then the marketing didn't want to talk about that either, because they were like, RTS doesn't sell anywhere except for Germany. You're never going to mention RTS. The first publisher was like, don't even, if they ask you if it's an RTS, say no. Like,
I remember that. G4 asked you about it, right?
Or about it when we had our second publisher, EA, they were just like, we're going to not emphasize that. But we did have like a multiplayer event in San Francisco. Like, I don't know if that would even get, where we actually had people play it, and Morgan Webb was there, and she's like, Tim, this is an RTS. Are you saying that enough? Because people might be upset if they like. So that's the thing, is like it was not the part that was added. It was the original heart of the game, and then we added the single player game to it. And it's always like it's a really interesting lesson, because we talk about often if talking about giving advice about how compromise and how to compromise. I'm like, well, you should really just be in touch with what the core of your idea is, and then know what you're willing to compromise on and what you're not. And like you were saying, like about setting a limit, like Batman, like okay, I'm going to compromise anything on this game, but I won't compromise heavy metal. That'll be my thing, as long as I don't give up on heavy metal.
Yeah.
But also, like, what started in RTS, I won't give that up. And you always wonder, like, or do you like recognize what the game is and be like, okay, people are really responding to the single player thing with Jack in it, and like, should you just cut all that stuff? And I feel like this is like an unsolved lesson in my mind, because that would have felt weird too, to like get rid of the part of the game that I loved and cared about. So I think that's a tricky thing to figure out for people, is like what to compromise and what not to compromise on. I think I'm here to say there is no answer to that. That's just something that I think everyone will struggle with on every project they do.
Yeah. That's
well, the production trick now is say, oh, we'll release this as DLC.
Yeah. The thing I was okay with not talking about the RTS stuff, and that was my mistake, was that I went along with that because of this SNES game, ActRaiser. You ever play ActRaiser? No,
ActRaiser.
ActRaiser. I think it's SNES. I think pretty sure, but you're playing this side scroller, just 2D side scroller hacking and slashing. And then you come out of this level and all of a sudden you're in this map of the town. They're like, now plant some crops. And you plant these like crops to like get resources to go back into the next side scrolling level. And everyone's like, oh my God, there's a SimCity game in the middle of the side scrolling thing. But everyone was like, we were also excited that the game just switched on us and became this whole different genre. I was like, yeah, people like being surprised. But I was like, not really everybody likes being surprised nowadays.
That's what I had in Beyond Good and Evil. Like, it was one of the things that blew my mind when I was younger, was the fact that it went from being a third person action game into a racer, into a photography espionage game. Like, it completely opened my eyes to the diversity of games, because as a kid I feel a lot of people tend to latch onto one genre and one kind of identity in games, and Beyond Good and Evil and Brutal Legends were games that opened my mind to being like, games can be more than just slashing things and running around and stuff like that. And it's really interesting to hear that what my assumptions were on the development is the complete opposite. It's really fascinating.
Should have had a documentary about it. That would have.
I watched it.
There was a little ActRaiser on the screen a while back. That was really cool.
Yeah, and I like that you dropped Herzog's Vibe, by the way. That was technically the first RTS,
I think
right?
so.
It predated Dune 2,
but I think that was maybe before.
That came after, or Dune 2, I think, came afterward, didn't it?
Yeah, because they had I think, Warcraft on N64, but you controlled a cursor with your thumbstick, and I was like, Herzog's Vibe, like your avatar, there was no cursor. You just had a giant robot that would fly around the battlefield and then land and be like a transformer. And that was.
Did they have Warcraft on N64? I thought that was StarCraft.
That's what I meant. StarCraft. Sorry, okay. StarCraft N64 had a cursor.
And that game was interesting. They actually upped the amount that you could grab, amount of units you could use from 12 to 18. I remember as a kid. I remember going to the PC version and being like, "Wait, I can't grab all my guys." It was an interesting limitation.
Yeah. Anyway, look how fast that is. There's StarCraft.
Eric's super fast.
Oh my God, Eric's a wizard.
Are there any genres that you would consider working on that you haven't yet, that you're curious about just a little bit?
Like I want to say I'm open to anything, but I feel like there's something I would never do just because they're so deep already, like shooters. Like oh God, I would never. I mean, I don't play a lot of them, but also it's like there's so much, depth to the fan base and the dev knowledge on that. It's like, I think people got that covered. But I love all kinds of genres. I'd love to do, like, when I played a lot of Animal Crossing during COVID, I'd be like, oh, it'd be fun to write all the dialogue for all the characters.
Yeah.
Like having a town like that, some sort of town that's alive, I think would be fun, caretaking and stuff like that. See, what other genres are there? I really feel like it's just, we've always tried to be not locked down to a genre at Double Fine. It's been mostly about what inspires us, and what ideas we have and what ideas you try and do something new with genres, which is always a challenge. Like Brutal Legend, it was like not really. It was weird. It was weird for an RTS. It was different, and it was it was avatar based. And anyway,
on console too.
On console.
Speaking of something new, Tina had a very unique idea.
Oh, getting a game pitch?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just before this pod started, Tina was like, how about, considering Tim is like the king of pitches, how about me, Tina, and Mikey on the spot come up with and pitch a game to Tim and see what
you think?
Are.
So they don't. So I came up with a general, pitch idea, and Mike and Jay have not heard what it is yet. So we're gonna improv this. So if you look at the screen, okay, you see a tiny little gentleman laying on the floor, in a leash.
That looks fun already.
So this game,
drag the kid around.
The game idea is you're a kid on a leash, right? You're kind of tied to your fate, but you want to explore. You want to journey off and do some amazing things. Let your imagination run wild. You want to play, but your parent has you tied down. So, you have a babysitter come, and the parents say, "Okay, you can go on a walk with him." So you put like a dog, they put on your leash. The babysitter is going to be on her cell phone, so she doesn't care. So I'm thinking this is like a side-scrolling platformer of some sort, where the babysitter is just sort of like an NPC that follows you around, and you're controlling where you go and stuff, and she's just not paying attention to you. So, Mike, what kind of core loop could you come up with for this kind of game?
I'm having a little trouble. I could see the meta progression first. So I think I have to actually start from the top.
Okay.
Naturally, if you're limited in your movement, then as you level up or as you get better at the game, as you play through and earn whatever you earn from doing the core loop, which I'm still thinking about, your leash gets longer, right? You go to new regions, you go to a new babysitter's house, and then you can explore all around the babysitter's house. So that's a really natural way to have like a good fatui where like, here's my small zone. My leash isn't long. And then gradually, as you keep going, you're going to expand your leash. I think we need to have some sort of magic and whimsy to why your leash expands, because you're playing as a child, and I think you want to be in the mind of that child, and the expansion going further. Like no parent would just like buy a longer leash and let them go. So I think there needs to be a magical element to it for that reason.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Obviously, first thought, this is a great idea. I was immediately thinking about your like collecting string. It's like you're able to collect things that are leash-like and add them to your leash yourself when the babysitter's not looking, and lengthen your own string and get farther and farther away from her. So pretty soon the babysitter's in a different level altogether, and you're just pulling the string around with you, but you have to go back and to the same location. If you want to get places, you have to like backtrack to like follow your leash, get it around the long way.
It could be different colors as well. Like the string you're adding could be different materials, so that the progression visually, you have this like collage of different strings.
That's like bed sheets and Doctor Who scarves and.
You guys play Katamari Damacy?
Yes.
Or how it's pronounced? Yeah. That's kind of what I'm envisioning now. And the core loop is like maybe you're getting a little bigger, not just on the meta progression side, but maybe you are expanding a little bit and getting further and further.
And the death screen is you can pull back along the leash really fast, all the way back along the level.
Yeah,
there's Katamari right there.
Jay, what kind of setting or level?
Okay, so from that first image, I had a couple of immediate thoughts. I really like Mikee's initial idea. I think that could work. But my immediate focus watching that wasn't the child; it was the parent.
Oh, okay.
And how you were dragging the child around, or like the children around that are tantruming. Yeah. And it's your job to basically navigate through an environment, avoiding hazards or things they want to stop the kids throwing a tantrum.
So you're the parent on it platforming.
You're a parent. That was like my initial thought. But then I was like, actually playing as the kid and, getting away from the babysitter. I love the idea of that mechanically acting kind of like a roguelike, where each run is effectively you being pulled back. Yeah. So your leash gets pulled back, and each run you try and get further and further, making your leash longer and engaging with different mechanics, different areas, different hazards, until you eventually escape.
I have something. Hold on. What if the way that you get to new regions in this world map or whatever is you're working your way up? Maybe you could tie into the roguelike stuff you're saying by like pissing off the babysitter. Like, so to move from one region to the next, you have to have your parents move you to a new babysitter in the neighborhood so you can explore around their house.
Get the babysitter fired.
Yeah. Oh, get her fired.
Maybe yourself.
You have to hurt yourself as a child. Show that the babysitter was incompetent. What's that?
Child can't be harmed, but I think it would be great to progress, even if the leash just got longer, to more and more hazardous locations. Like you start off at a mall, but then you go to like Six Flags, and then you're in a sawmill, and then you're in something like a razor blade factory. You're just getting in the worst places for a kid to be, like a den of wolves. I don't know. Just
you eventually find your way to where your parents are. Like they're having dinner at like some fancy restaurant, and your job is to get there and like smash on the windows.
That's how you get the babysitter fired.
Yeah.
Or you get all the way around the world and somehow come to the back of the babysitter, and then you tie the leash around itself, and then it's an Ouroboros type situation.
Yeah, and rope physics. That was another thing that I think
that's a mechanic you need.
Rope physics is the first thing to get cut in any game. Like, these are hard.
It's one of the things, Chained Together, which is quite a popular game at the moment, multiplayer. You're chained to a person. You have to scale this infinite, not infinite, but really tall spire of Unity asset store assets. And sometimes the chain you have physically reacts to the world, and you have to wrap it around objects to slide down them, and you have to, it gets caught on certain objects, and you have to really think about it.
Yeah.
But not all of them. Yeah. Most of the time they go through everything, and then sometimes it does. Like inconsistency, in my opinion, is like the bane of any kind of design. If it works one way with one thing, it should work like that for everything, because it always like brings you out and it's super inconsistent. So it would be super difficult, but I think if the entire system of the game was built around ropes, like maybe that's how you open doors. You have to jump the rope over the door handle and then twice to wrap it round, and then when you walk away from it, it turns the handle and opens it.
A lot of physics gameplay.
Potentially, you could do it in a way that is pseudo physicsy, like it's implying that it is, but it's not really. It's just systems driven. But yeah, it's complex, like Tim said. Usually, those things are the first to get cut because they are messy as fuck.
And the main thing is you don't want to ever tug on the leash, because then she'll become aware of you and pull you back.
Yeah.
And you have to, one of the collectibles can be apps for her phone. Like you send new Candy Crush type games to her phone. She gets
new Taylor Swift album drops.
Yeah. She's more like enraptured by her phone.
Yeah.
The tugging is a fantastic idea there, Tim, because you can have it so, like, say you're on the first map, there is only a specific distance you can get away from the babysitter before the leash becomes taut and gets tugged. So you are in a constraint of there is a collectible, there is more string in this area because I can't get away. And that means like you potentially wrapping the lead around objects could decrease the amount of play you have distance wise. Like you have to go back and unwrap yourself and move around. That being like your failure state of if you tug, you're done. Which sounds a bit weird, but I think that could be fantastic. All right, Tina, come on.
I don't know if Tim's vibing with this. I don't know. Do you like your game idea?
That's the name of the game. Tug and you're done.
You're done.
Tug and done.
Tantrum tuggers.
I just wrote down a couple names, Jay. Kid Bound, Unleashed, but Tug and You're Done might be the one.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Nope. Great.
Okay.
Well, you're rich, Tina. This already, I can't believe I just witnessed you getting rich in front of us. But this is the big turnaround for you.
I just need to borrow your team to make this happen.
I promise there won't be any crunch.
Yeah, no crunch.
Unless the kid finds their way to the steamroller.
Yeah.
Ride the steamroller, but oh no, the leash is in the steamroller. No.
Oh no.
We'll fade to black. It'll be fine. We'll fade to black.
Yeah. Just crunching sounds.
All right.
That's 2 parts of audio for you right there. Thank you, Jay.
Okay, so because I know I want to be mindful of time, because I know we've got some meetings to get to and such, we do have a couple of donations that have come in, and we're just going to go through them. And if there's any questions, just quickly answer them. Let me quickly go to that. Oh my God, there's.
Oh wait, there is a question. So, what do you rate the pitch? 1 through 10.
I was instantly bought in.
Really?
So, yeah, I mean that's a very compelling mechanic. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the program, but if you were like, that's the thing missing from it. You're like, we got the guy from some game that has a lot of rope in it.
How about grapple hooks?
Like you got the Unravel 2.
I can get the engineer that did grapple for Titanfall and Apex.
Yeah. We got that guy. That's our unfair advantage. We got it. Then I think it's money on the table right there. That's just you're set.
All right.
Cool.
Well, look out, guys! You're going to be seeing, what did we call it? Tug forever.
Don't call it tugging done.
I said Kid Bound or Unleashed.
There's a home movie in my family where I am strapped. They're like, my family's camping in Canada, and I'm 2 years old, and they're sitting at a picnic table, and I am pulling at the end of this harness, like because I've been chained to the table with like a little kid harness, and like, and it's more common to see now. But when I saw this home movie in the '70s, I was like, oh my God, I was like an animal. You guys had me on a harness. But it was like, yeah, how can I make dinner? How can I make dinner if I didn't know that you were tied to the picnic table? And I'm just like,
we could use that video when we make our pitch presentation.
There we go.
Yeah. I'm trying to work with demons from my childhood.
There you go.
Unleashed. I love Unleashed as a title as well. I think.
Is it taken? It might be taken.
If you call it Unchained, you could get the Van Halen song.
Ooh.
Oh my God. Now it's turning into a metal project. I'm fucking down.
Depending on the budget.
Toddlers and heavy metal music go very well together.
Wandering Tods.
There you go.
Boom. Right. I'm
Love
gonna get to
this.
some of these
Thank
donos because
you.
we've got a few of them, and a few of them are questions. So we'll give them a go. So the first one is $5 from the Robert Frost goof and subsequent achievement. I don't think I've ever laughed harder in a video game.
People
Aw.
love Robert Frost. What can I say? That was so fun to not fun. I just the list of names that got translated to in other countries because he's an American poet. So like in France and everywhere, they're like, no one knows who Robert Frost is here. So it became all these names that I don't recognize. Like Captain.
Oh no.
There's some captain in France. It's just like what each country thought that balloon looked like was a really fun list.
It's amazing.
Translations is just a fascinating part of game dev that isn't spoken about
Localization.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, localization's crazy.
Yeah.
It's one of the first things my game dev teacher when I was studying was going on about when we were doing UI design. He was like, you got to think about localization. And I was like, what do you mean? So it's a whole kettle of fish.
But they love a
Strategy
challenge.
games
They love a
have to-
challenge.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Especially when it's
Yeah.
like a pun or comedic, right? That has to land in a different language. You know,
And you think just about changing words and meaning, but it's about the culture. And like in Monkey Island, we had this insult sword fighting, and there was a line about like you fight like a janitor. It was like an insult. You fight like a janitor because you're
Aw.
waving your sword around like a feather duster. And our French translator was in the office at LucasArts, and she's like, I don't know how to translate this line. It's like, oh, he's saying like you're waving your sword around like you're waving a mop or something. A janitor. She goes, no, that's not the thing. It's like, well, don't you have like what's the word for janitor in French? She's like, no, that's not the thing. It's not an insult because in France we honor labor. And I was like,
Oh.
like, she's just like, you can't insult someone by calling them a janitor. And I was like, well, that's not what we meant. Like,
damn.
so I was like, wow,
That's
there's more to
amazing.
it. There's more to it than that.
Oh, yeah, the culture.
Speaking of culture, strategy games have to keep in mind things like how do we refer to China? How do we refer to Taiwan? That's a big one there.
Or do we not?
Yeah.
And
Or
most
do we-
publishers
exactly,
will
yeah.
say you don't.
But there's a space on the Earth, and when you like zoom out into the map,
Yeah.
what do you call that space?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough.
It's a whole kettle of fish. Do you know what? I'm gonna do a video on that localization. It's
Yeah.
happening.
I'll help because I
Hell yeah.
had some crazy stories.
We need more reasons to all collaborate with each other. So let's do it, Tina.
Yeah.
Right. So John,
When you're done with Tug and Done,
yeah,
Unchained : Tug and Done.
Oh, there you go. Put a colon in there. Now I can have.
Oh my
we're
God.
making this now. It's
I'm
a
so
colon in
happy.
there.
This makes me so happy.
I'm gonna start prototyping this in Unreal tonight.
Yeah. I'll produce
Right.
it.
John Titor, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Welcome to Tip Jar. Ishmu gives 20 quid. Thanks so much, boss. And says, oh my God, it's Tim Schafer. You've provided me with so much joy over the course of my life. I just want to say thanks.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. That's nice.
Kamja Ninja with $5. Thank you so much. And he says, you've got everyone fooled, Mr. Schafer, but I'm on to you. I know you're Jack Black in disguise. Thanks for all of the joys. Your secret is safe with me.
He can play me in the made for TV movie.
Yeah.
No, he would never do made for TV.
Yeah, he's surpassed that now, isn't he? He's a bit he's a big boy.
The
Jewel
Lifetime
Rowe.
movie.
Yeah. Jewel Rowe with €5, thank you. And says some money for Tim of Legend and Second Wind, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, I get a cut of that? That's great.
Hell yeah, dude.
$5
I'll Venmo you that
right
right
into
now.
my pocket.
You'll get $4.99 and we'll get the 1 cent. Right, Dark Jackal with a $5 says, thanks for the great conversation as always, team. Question, Tim, what is your favorite genre that you would not want to make a game in?
Gosh, I don't know if there's a genre. I mean, I would not want to make. I mean, I like it. I don't know if I have an answer to that because I was like saying I don't really play a lot of.
I think you're cutting out a bit, Tim. You said you normally play a lot of.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I mean, all the genres I play, I think I would love to make. You know, like I wish they were more. Like we're talking Beyond Good and Evil, and one of the reasons I made Psychonauts 2 was kind of like I just wish there were more games like this. You know, I want to play this. Like I'll put this into the world, put Psychonauts 2 in the world, and maybe someone will give me a game back that I can play. Because like those kind of narrative type games where you're in a world and it's like there's some platforming, but there's also a lot of characters and all that stuff. Like I just want tons of games like that, character based. And also, like, you know, bright and colorful and stylized art and stuff. So
It's like my dream projects.
that doesn't answer your question at all. But if I think of a genre I wouldn't want to make, that I actually like to play. I'll tell you, I don't know. Like I think I like a lot of puzzle games that like Patrick's Pear Box and have you played that one? Am I saying it right? Patrick's Pear Box.
I don't know that one.
Great puzzle game.
No, I don't know that one either.
I love puzzle games and like the old NES game that you can play on Switch called Fire and Ice, where you're pushing these little just block pusher puzzles and stuff. But I don't think I have the skills to make a block pusher puzzle. I'll say that.
Puzzles are
Maybe.
a beast.
Closest thing. I could probably do it. You just get some good designers. You can do it. Look at that. Look how fast.
Way to go, Eric.
Yeah. Oh, I remember this level. Oh god.
You do.
Oh, okay, yeah. I dig this. Reminds me of Baba Is You a little bit.
It does. That's what my daughter said. This feels like Baba Is You, but it's a recursive block pusher where you go in and out of yourself. Like you go into cubes that become the map, and the map is the cubes, and you go in the cubes.
Oh, dang.
Super cool. You really twist your mind around trying to understand what's going on.
Oh, I dig that. I'm gonna play that.
Like it seems unsolvable because like that's too like the first time I saw a trailer for Portal, I was like, I'm never gonna be able to keep these portals straight in my head. And then as you like develop in the game, you're like, I'm a portal management. That's what this game feels like.
Pacing is so important with puzzle design. It's super important. All right, we've got a couple more. So from Phil Myasup gives 50 NOK. I'm terrible with currencies. Do you guys know what a NOK is? NOK?
Looking it up.
It looks probably Scandinavian.
Huh?
Phil's probably said this to me.
Oh, the Norwegian
krone.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, Phil.
I got it for the bell.
Thank you so much. With game dev time being so long as it is and visions change, does this cause discontent within the team when things change?
Well, the length of dev time is the effect on morale for sure. Because it used to be, I remember finishing Monkey Island and being like, ugh, I never want to think about pirates again. And that was like 9 months or something, that dev cycle. So it's like, that's one of the reasons we started Amnesia Fortnite, which is our game jam in the middle of Brutal Legend, because it was our first like 5-year game. And I was like, the team is going to, I love heavy metal, but I don't know if everyone on the team likes to be in this world for so long, like just surrounded by demons and heavy metal. And so let's just take the 2-week break and just like do some silly games to lighten everything up. But it is something you gotta, I would love to get back to like the game in 2 years, but they seem like big, complicated modern AAA games are hard to make in that amount of time, and they only get more complicated.
Yeah.
All right, we got Pi or PL Pi with $5. Thank you so much. I've been stuck in a cave for 20 years and I just got out. Release Psychonauts, Tim, you coward. I have my Xbox. Where's the game?
Wait, Psychonauts 1?
He's been in the cave, or they've been in
the cave for 20 years, dude. They're still waiting for Psychonauts.
Okay.
What do we do? Do we just
I think
give them
they
the
want
game?
you to give Psychonauts the Skyrim treatment, just on every platform.
I'll just keep releasing
it.
In perpetuity.
Yeah, I'm into it. Get it everywhere.
Damn.
On cave systems.
Yeah. They run on rocks.
Projected from a campfire onto the walls of a cave.
This is usually always a no. But can you speak to what you're currently working on? And feel free to say no.
No. We're doing new stuff. We haven't announced anything, but we're working on multiple games, and it's all new. All new.
Hell yeah. So lots
like
to look forward to.
IP and stuff.
Oh, I was just about to wrap up, but we've got one more donation from Yeet Miser. $5. Thank you so much. Psychonauts 2 is my game of the generation. Thank you so much for your work, Tim.
There's one more before that.
Oh, is there? Did it not show up in the thing? Oh, it's El Cheshire. El Cheshire is the wonderful artist who does all the background work in my videos. As many people know, my show's animated. Wonderful artist, El Cheshire. It says, hi, Jay. Don't read the rest of this if it's too unprofessional. Could you ask Tim if we could take a selfie? Eric, can you do the thing if he says yes?
How do we take a selfie?
So, okay, El Cheshire has drawn themselves and would like to overlay their drawing inside so it looks like we've taken a selfie. If you're down for that, we just need
Tim, do we have your permission to virtually align you with a character?
Even though I haven't seen El Cheshire, it might be incredibly offensive.
Just jump down for a second and we'll put them
Eric, do you have it? Oh, okay.
So that's my hand. Wait.
Oh, that's amazing. I wish I did
No,
that.
wait.
Oh wait, Eric can move things.
Should
Eric
I
can
hold
move
still
things.
and just let him do the magic?
Yeah, like Eric, let Eric do the stuff.
But I want to. Oh, it's left.
Give him a kiss. Whoa.
Yeah, it's getting really heated. But I'm all like nestled in his beard. No way. Hold on. How do I put my hand? No.
No, make him hover hand. You know how people used to hover hand at GDC?
Eric, we gotta widen that grip. No, it's good.
Amazing. Oh my god, amazing.
Got it.
Am I looking the right way?
Yeah, that's
Oh, yeah.
perfect.
Thank
I gave you a quick pat.
Amazing.
Awesome.
El Cheshire, I hope that works for you. You can take a screenshot of some of that
I
stuff.
have a last question for you, Tim. So I have 2 kids under 2, which is insane. But when your daughter was watching your career and, seeing your fans approach you and praise you, did she think that was cool? Did she think your job is cool?
I think so. When like her friends, like recently, she had her birthday party. We let her bring her friends to the office and use the big screen and watch a movie. And her friends thought the office was really cool. And I could see she's going like, "Oh, my dad's not embarrassing. That's great. Okay, good. Okay, my friends think that's cool."
Aww.
So that helps, But she's always liked games. We've always played games together. She's at least started all of my games. And if we're walking down the street and someone talks to me, they're usually lovely. Like everyone who comes up is like super nice and stuff. So I think she sees that as a positive.
That's
As
cool.
a positive thing for sure.
That's
But she
lovely.
used to talk about being a game designer, but now she talks about being an actor. So
Oh, right on.
maybe she'll come back to
Yeah.
being a game designer later.
Yeah.
Well, if she makes her way to LA, I'll hang out. Tell her I'll buy her dinner.
Oh wow! Hey, there's a strange lady in LA who wants to
Hell yeah.
buy you dinner.
We've met before, haven't we?
Yeah, we met before, but you don't
We met
remember.
before when you were a child.
I've seen you from a distance many a time.
Cool.
That's awesome.
So just before we wrap up, we've got one more lovely donation from Dow Dodger Esquire, $9.99. Thank you. And it says from Jombly Wombly, who's another one of our fantastic viewers. It says, Tim, Grim Fandango is one of my greatest of all times. Manny is one of the best characters ever. Your games made me a better person. Thank you so much.
Aw.
We got from limited run, gold
Nice.
bow wagon.
That's cool.
Sick.
Yeah, dog.
All right.
Dog's activated. He's like, "Okay, I'm done with this podcast. Ready to go."
We're off. So I can't see any more donations coming in. Sometimes they trickle, but we've got a bit of a hard out, guys. So if I'm doing my ending spiel and you donate, I'll read it and we'll post it in the Discord. But Tim, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to hear about your journey and your experience in the industry, and to kind of hear about your thoughts on our tugging game, which is definitely going to get made.
Don't call it that.
I can't call it that.
That's a working title. You have to.
That's the dev title.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you, Ludo.
Ludo, come say hello.
Oh, 2 kids. Oh, look at that hair.
Ludo's awesome. Watch how docile again.
Ludo is the most docile creature in the world. She just loves sitting like this.
Yup.
Because I played with her like this as a baby. I
teddy
was
bear.
not joking, Tim, when I said most of my audience on my show are here for her than little animated her rather than me. They love her, and I love her. But you gonna say goodbye to Tim? Say goodbye.
I wanted to show you my kids real quick. I got a
Your
photo of
kids?
my kids from this
Two
morning.
kids
Yeah.
competing with the cute dog.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
I
might
saw.
win.
I saw them.
Yeah.
They have great hair. Is that red hair?
It's like, yeah, she's almost turning ginger now. It's pretty great. She
Wow.
has curly hair.
Like Merida.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Look at the smile on the Ickle one.
Yeah.
Aw. Yeah.
That's-
You.
And you're wearing the same shirt.
yes, that's from this morning.
Okay. That's often I'll look at a picture of Lily. It's like 16 years ago, and I'm wearing the same shirt.
Yeah,
Time is different for adults.
exactly. Cool. Well,
Awesome.
thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having me,
much.
you guys. Great talking
Thank
to
you.
you.
Really
Thank
good
you.
meeting you, Tim.
Nice
Tell
to
your
meet
team
you.
we said hi and good luck with your new IP.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, so-
Thank you.
To all our viewers, thank you so much for joining. Thanks for all of your donations. And if you would like to support the show further, please check out our Patreon, where you can support shows like this and all of the other wonderful curated content you can see here on Second Wind. So from all of us, thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.